Hi, everybody, and welcome to the Nature of Teaching Professional Development webinar series. My name is Lauren Teamy, and I'm the Ag and Natural Resources Educator for Purdue Extension out of Delaware County. Today's webinar will cover the units Discovering the Watershed, which will teach students about how human impacts affect water quality, and also the unit Happy Water, Healthy Home. Or Healthy Water, Happy Home. This unit will cover water quality, aquatic habitat, and indicator species. Joining me today is Shelby Royal. She's the Hellbender Husbandry Coordinator for Purdue University. Today, she's going to be introducing the units, followed by some videos of the individual lesson activities. I'll finish the webinar highlighting additional resources and the procedure to obtain your certificate of completion for this webinar. And with that, Shelby, I'll turn it over to you.
Thanks, Lauren. So as Lauren said, we are going to be going over two different units today. And the first unit that we will be going over is the Healthy Water, Happy Home lesson plan. So in this lesson plan, we will be going over the targeted grade levels and standards, the estimated time required for the lesson and activity plan, the required materials, and the procedures for the hands-on activities. The estimated time for this lesson plan and activity is around 60 to 90 minutes. The targeted graded levels and standards are for English and science around 4th and 5th grade. The required materials needed for this lesson plan are going to be the Healthy Water, Happy Home vocabulary worksheet for each student, a game board for a group of 4 to 8 students, 1 die per game, a Healthy Water, Happy Home player piece and title sheet per game, a 1-minute timer, 20 of the do something cards, 20 of the test your trivia cards, 20 of the be the scientist cards, and that is for each game, 1 notebook per team of 2 students, a pencil for a team of 2 students, 3 paper clips per game to hold each stack of cards together, and finally, the Healthy Water, Happy Home PowerPoint. So we're going to go over a little bit about what an aquatic habitat is. And a habitat is exactly what it sounds like. An animal's habitat is where it lives. So many organisms can be affected by different indicators, especially in aquatic habitats. Fish spend their entire life in these, so in the river, as well as amphibians, and then mammals come up to the shoreline to drink from the water here. Having poor water quality can cause a lot of issues, not only for the fish and amphibians that live in the water, but as well as the mammals that come to shore to drink it, and us as we use it for crops and other things. If we use too much water, or if we pollute the water, the fish and wildlife populations start to decrease, and human populations can actually be negatively affected. So how can you tell if the water quality is poor? So water quality is the measure of the condition of relative to the requirements of the species. A lot of species, like our friend the eastern hellbender here, require a really clean, healthy water system. And the eastern hellbenders are actually an indicator species, which means that they are good at indicating the health of an ecosystem. So in aquatic ecosystems, amphibians are often indicator species because they breathe through their skin and are very sensitive to water quality. Things like runoff, which is rainwater that flows over the surface of the ground and into local rivers and streams, they can pick up different kinds of pollutions that affect water quality, such as fertilizers, pesticides, or sediments. And this can come from our cars, our streets, and this runoff enters storm drains and eventually comes into the water systems that can lead to bad water quality. Sediment, for example, is one of the problems that eastern hellbenders face when dealing with water quality. So sediment is going to be soil that is moved from land to water, and sediment harms the freshwater habitat by making the water murky. It also makes it harder for the eastern hellbenders to find their food, which is essential for them, and can also clog up their gills as well as clog up riverbed rocks that they use for shelter. Another indicator of water quality would be the dissolved oxygen. Dissolved oxygen is the oxygen that is dissolved in the water that fish and other aquatic organisms need to breathe. And sediment or other runoffs like fertilizers or pesticides can actually cause an algae bloom that reduces the amount of dissolved oxygen in the water. This can lead to an increase in aquatic microorganisms and bacteria and can cause difficulty breathing for most aquatic species. Now, we have things that we can do to help protect not only our friend the eastern hellbender here, but as well as other aquatic species. So composting is a really good way to make healthy water choices, as well as washing your car at a car wash or on a grass or gravel area. Sweep your sidewalks and driveways instead of hosing them off to reduce sediment. You can also leave your grass clippings and leaves where they are or bag them up to be disposed of instead of blowing them into the street to wash away in the storm drains. Especially grass clippings can hold pesticides and fertilizers that clog storm drains and can cause flooding, which goes back into our natural river and stream systems. Also, another important one is to pick up pet waste to greatly improve water quality. So other bigger projects that we can do are create rain barrels. And so we use rain barrels to collect the water from your roof or downspout. Collecting the water with rain barrels and using it to water your garden is a great way of improving water quality, because that way we don't have to use excess amount of water. And then also another important one is going to be plant native plants and tree species. These require less maintenance, pesticides, or fertilizers, and in some cases, less water. So now we'll go over the hands-on activity for the lesson plan.
Hi everybody, my name is Shelby Royal. I am the Hellbender Husbandry Coordinator for Purdue University. Today we are going to be going over the activity in our Healthy Water, Happy Home lesson plan. In this activity, students will be playing a board game that teaches them the importance of water quality and how different factors such as runoff and sedimentation play its role. This game is to teach the importance of water quality and how different indicator species, like our friend the eastern hellbender, live throughout these different habitats. The rules for the game are as followed. Students should be separated into groups between 4 to 9 students. From there, they will pair up in groups of 2 or 3. Each student will choose from one of our playing cards, and only one playing card per group. From there, the groups of students will roll the dice, and in the dice that has the highest roll will go first. The group of students that rolled the highest number in the first round will go first. From there, they will roll the dice with their playing card on the start position and go clockwise, however many spots the dice had rolled. Now, if the player lands on a crayfish, this piece they should draw from the Do Something card decks. So it could be something as charades or sing it. If they land on a water symbol, this means that the player should draw from the Be a Scientist. And you must correct sentences or make a plan on habitats. If they land on a rock, the player should draw from the trivia deck. This is where they have multiple choice questions or true and false answers. Depending on what space the students land on, the students should draw from the corresponding deck. However, once they draw the card, the students should not read the correct answer that's upside down on some of the card labels, and they should not show their teammates or other players their card unless specifically asked to do so from the card. The player reads aloud the card to the entire group, and from there, a student from another team will start the 1-minute timer. That student has 1 minute to either act out or guess the answer correctly. If that player guesses the answer correctly or in the time that it is allowed, the team will get to move on to the next point in their next turn. However, if this player does not correctly answer or get the act done within a minute, the player's game piece must stay in the same position on the board for another turn. and another team member from the same team must draw from that same deck and on that next team turn. This process repeats until the team answers a card correctly. They have one chance to complete a task or answer a question per turn, and players should always return the cards to the bottom of the deck once finished. The team of students that reach the hellbender first are the winner of the game. After the game, review ways that students can improve water quality from home using healthy water choices.
So next we'll go over the Discovering the Watershed lesson plan. And if you're interested in learning the sneak peek video for the Healthy Water Happy Homes, you can visit our YouTube channel or search in the YouTube bar for the Nature of Teaching, as well as Healthy Water Happy Homes. So for Discovering the Watershed, we're going to go over the targeted grade levels and standards, the estimated time, the required materials, and procedures for the hands-on activities. So the estimated time for this lesson and activity is approximately 60 minutes. And the targeted grade levels and standards are going to be English and science for 5th grade. So the materials that are required for this lesson plan are going to be the Watershed Game Board, Human Impact cards, the Indicator Species cards, a vocabulary worksheet and key, an Eastern Hellbender photo, an Eastern Hellbender distribution map, Ohio River and Blue River watershed map, a unique game piece per player, beads and marbles to represent the pollution, a clear 8-ounce cup to hold water, 1 per student, and dice, 2 per playing group. So as we kind of indicated earlier, that this lesson plan will go over the water quality and indicator species. But first you're going to define what a watershed is, and that is basically the area of land where all of the water drains into the same places. So watersheds can be composed of creeks, streams, rivers, ponds, lakes, and groundwater and oceans. Most water will begin its long journey, and it comes across different areas that may influence the water and its quality. So they could be coming up to a factory which drains into the water system, as well as agricultural farms that don't use the proper practices to keep their pesticides and fertilizers within the actual farm area, as well as being impacted by urban families and the different sedimentations and runoff that we get from our cars, as well as our fertilizing our lawns. So as I mentioned, water quality is extremely important, and it uses the measures of different chemical, biological, and physical characteristics of the water to understand how humans and other animals use it for proper habitats. So different things that can affect the water quality, of course, is going to be sedimentation, which we talked about earlier, which is anything that comes from the land to the water that causes a little bit of a murkiness and cloudiness. But soil erosion is another important one that we don't typically think of. So erosion occurs when the topsoil is removed from the land's surface and slides into the water as well. So these can transport unwanted nutrients and pollutions, such as organic nitrogen, phosphorus, pesticides into our different watersheds. Now, leaching is another important one that we don't typically think of, and this is a natural process by which chemicals, minerals, and different waste or pharmaceuticals are washed out of the soil and enter into the groundwater. And groundwater is the water that fills the empty spaces between the earth. So this can actually affect water quality in different ways, especially when pesticides are sprayed, because a lot of the times what happens is when that pesticide settles into the soil, it leaches through the soil as well, which can cause it to go into the watershed and into our rivers and streams. So the best way to control this is going to be planting more trees and near the streams and river, and also by providing what is called a buffer zone. So basically it is 2 strips that are on either side of the water body. And these are usually typically going to be filled with native plants and trees that just help to stabilize the soil, as well as kind of mitigate how much of the pesticides or fertilizers or erosion kind of actually gets into the watershed. Now, as I said before, indicator species are going to tell us what is considered a good or a bad habitat. And so amphibians are a really good indicator species. So our friend the eastern hellbender is actually an amphibian. And so usually amphibians have a unique 2-stage lifestyle. So this means that they start out in the water and then they move out onto land. So they'll have their eggs and larvae will start in the water, and then as they get older, they'll start reabsorbing their gills and then moving onto the land. However, with the eastern hellbender, they are fully aquatic. So that means they spend their entire life cycle in the water. So even though they absorb their gills, they still breathe through their skin, which is how they get their oxygen. So they really need that dissolved oxygen in the water to be high. That way they can breathe properly. And so eastern hellbenders are considered endangered in almost every state they are found in because of poor water quality and things such as sedimentation or erosion that causes their habitat to not only lose suitable spaces for them to hide or shelter, but also their food availability becomes extremely limited. So it's always important to do the practices like we discussed in Healthy Water, Happy Homes, which is, minimize the amount of fertilizer you use, keep your grass clippings or your leaves in spots where they should be, or wash your car in a graveled area or a car wash so that the amount of pesticides or fertilizers, things like that, stay in a contained area rather than leaking out and leaching into our watershed. So I'll go over the rules of the game real quick. So if you want, you can pause this and show your students how you want to go about the game. It's really easy just to set up the game. You lay out all the game boards so that every player has access. You place human impact cards around the board, place game pieces on the start, and beads in the areas where the player has access. Fill the clear cups halfway with water, and set the indicator cards aside for the end of the game. So the game starts by rolling. Each player is going to roll a dice, and the highest roller gets to go first, and then each player takes a turn by that as well. So you want to follow the instructions on the human impact card. If the impact is positive, you remove the beads from your cup. If it is negative, you add beads to your cup. If you receive a positive before you have beads, no action is going to be required. And then you repeat these steps until the end of the board game. So it is important to note, and I'll show you the game board here in a second, that the urban section splits into 3 paths. It really doesn't matter which path you take. The goal is to not reach the end first, but to have the cleanest water. So when you're looking at it in your cup, you want 0 to 5 bees. That receives the Eastern Hellbender indicator species card. So it means you have the highest, cleanest water, and it's great. 6 to 9 beads receive a frog indicator species, which means your water quality isn't horrible, but it could be improved as well. And then 10 plus beads receive no indicator species cards because your water quality is unfit for amphibians to live in. So just to go through all of that one more time. So here's the game board. So all the players are going to start at the start over here. And so the player that rolls the highest will go first. And so they'll roll again to move their piece over in how many ever spaces it says. And you're either going to land in the forestry section, which is represented by the green. the agricultural section, which is represented by yellow, or the urban area, which is represented by gray. Now, just to remind you that even though there are 3 different paths for the urban area, it doesn't really matter which way it is. So let's say you pick up a human impact card in the forestry section. One of 2 things is going to happen. For example, so one of the impact cards says John decides to restore a wetland to help filter and clean rainwater before entering the watershed. In this indication, you would remove 3 beads from your cup. On the opposite side, though, another impact card reads, Tim decides to drain a wetland, causing unfiltered water to drain into the watershed. In this case, you are causing an impact, which means you would add 4 beads to your water. So once everybody reaches the end of the game, you would count how many beads are in your cup. And just like before, the least amount of beads is what you want to receive the highest quality, which means that you would be an Eastern Hellbender indicator. And then you go up from there.
Great, Shelby. Thank you for going through those lessons. Before we finish up, I was hoping you could talk a little bit about your work with hellbenders. So as the hellbender husbandry coordinator, what are you doing, or what are some of the things that you do to help ensure that they live, if that makes sense, since they're an indicator species, right? So they're very fragile in a way. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, so what I personally do is we do things a little bit different. So we have it so that instead of being in like a normal laboratory setting, they do receive well water, which is kind of closer to an actual river system. So they still get those kind of minerals, calcium, iron, all those kinds of things. And so with that, I have to really make sure that, tanks stay clean, DO is reasonably high. I feed them all the time, which they love. Like they just got crayfish, so they're super happy. But I really try to do everything I can to make sure that they are going to grow big and healthy. So that does mean, cleaning the tanks regularly. It also means doing water quality weekly to understand, because what impacts us the most here is going to be, our dissolved oxygen, to make sure that's okay, our nitrates and nitrites, to make sure those aren't too high, because those will actually cover their skin and then they can't breathe as well as ammonia, which can actually block their gills from absorbing the dissolved oxygen in the water.
Great, thanks.
Yeah.
And this is again just another small question. What is your favorite, would you consider yourself a scientist in what you do in a way?
Some aspects. I definitely think I do help with the research projects that go on out here. So my personal goal is to be a scientist for the husbandry aspect of it. So learn more about what can I do to make sure that they actually grow in the best environment that I can supply them with. So what's going to make them grow the largest? What food are they going to want to eat more of that I have available? So it's definitely a trial and error kind of system. So
Oh, that's great. So thank you all for joining us for this and with these 2 lessons, Healthy Water, Happy Home, and Discovering the Watershed. If you enjoyed this, I encourage you to click on the card in the top right of your screen to visit our YouTube channel. Here you can view sneak peeks of lesson plans that are directly related to the webinar that you just completed. And the reason that I asked you those questions, Shelby, is because we have a lot of other YouTube videos out there that go over things like that, like citizen science, or we have a piece of curriculum that is specifically about just hellbenders. So we have other things out there that kind of walk you through some of these things. And so, encouraging youth through STEM or STEAM-based activities, I think it's really important. And so Shelby, you did a great job. Thanks. So in order to, we'll just keep moving on. Can you go to the next one, please? Yeah. So of course, you guys are all here for a reason, or most of you. So to obtain your certificate of completion for this webinar, please click on the second card in the top right of your screen. Here you'll be directed to a short Qualtrics survey to provide us some feedback on the program. Once that's completed, you'll be automatically emailed your certificate of completion. We hope that you enjoyed learning with us today and hearing more from Shelby. And consider participating in additional professional development webinars offered by the Nature of Teaching team. Until then, thank you for engaging our youth with nature.